A couple of people got a chance to watch those and want to talk about what they see happening that led to either a fall or a big flub. And then we're going to spend some time managing pressure with flexion and extension, 4 techniques from the Alpine technical manual: up-unweighting, down-unweighting, absorption, and retraction. And then get into a tale of 4 turns and how that compares to the PSI pressure management terminology. And then, my real goal for today is a deep dive on a level 3 short radius performance turns. This is certainly one of my Achilles heels, and going for a level 3 exam this year is short radius turns. So to look at those, we'll talk about the IDP descriptions, body and ski performance, and then do some MAs. And then kind of for fun, I threw in some quotes that came to mind as I was going through putting the deck together. I did manage to pass my level 3 MA, not having committed to memory the 4 techniques of flexion extension. So really digging into this and trying to think it through and apply it, it did some things to my brain, as Chuck would attest. So on Beyond Zebra, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, and I knew who I was this morning. All thought process I went through in putting this together. All right, just for fun, who had a chance to look at the first forensic MA?
I looked at both of them.
Oh, cool.
I did too.
Let's bring it up. So all right, who wants to take a shot at it? And can everybody see the guy sliding into home and crashing?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
So I'll take a shot. I looked at it a few times, and it happens so quick, and trying to focus on ski performance. I see the skis tipping fairly quickly to a very high edge angle. And then what happens? Then I think because of the edge angle and the skier getting off balance, the skis just stop, and his momentum gets carried forward.
Yeah, so it's a great start. At the high edge angle, he starts to skid, but then all of a sudden he grips. What's creating the difference in force that changes it from a skidding force to a gripping force?
Did you say pressure?
So yeah, pressure definitely, but what changes it? Because he's heavily inclined.
Part of it, I think you have to talk to the snow, because it's fairly soft, and his ski just digs in at the end, and it just throws him forward.
Mm-hmm.
Would you also say that his body is angled toward the hill itself versus having a balanced position, and that
So yeah, that's
his momentum in a different direction?
So that's a great question, or a great point. So he's banked, his body is all the way to the inside.
Yes.
And then it isn't. So what happened there, and what performance change in his skis would occur as his center of mass started to move more over the skis?
The ski stops slipping, starts carving.
Yeah, exactly.
And that creates a huge force on the edge.
Can you
Bingo.
slow it down further?
Yeah, let me do that 1 second here. So with YouTube, there's a feature where you can use the period and the comma keys basically to advance 1 frame at a time. So yeah, here his body is banked completely. He's got a big edge angle. And the center of mass is so far inside, he's creating a lateral pressure to push the ski's skidding motion instead of down into a grip.
Yeah,
So
it looks like he's sliding into second base.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
I didn't expect him to hit something when I first saw this.
Yeah. So here that inside ski starts to hook up a little bit and change direction. So all of a sudden that ski is not going the same direction as his center of mass is traveling. And so as it continues forward, that ski hooks up and his center of mass continues straight downhill. Now this is putting him over his skis and more importantly his outside ski, and they grip. So when they grip, and also as his knee flexed and he came forward a little bit, it moved his center of mass. Now it's ahead of his outside ski instead of behind it. So here you can see the downhill or outside ski really starting to flex. That tip is digging in and grabbing, and it's going to carve and quickly change direction and slow down suddenly as it starts to change direction so rapidly. And his heel comes out.
Do you think it's the downhill ski that's slowing down because it's carving?
So at that moment in time, yeah, think about it. When the ski flexes as much as it did right there, it's trying to go in a whole new direction from him.
Right.
So see how his momentum takes him forward relative to the ski,
Right.
creating the heel release.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of a fun one. Let's jump to the next.
You look at the pressure that must have been on that ski.
Yeah. Isn't that
Significant.
great?
Ah,
Yeah,
it's like
he flexed that ski a ton, didn't he?
So that's a good example of too much too soon, we go boom. So, but it happens to everybody, right?
Righty. And this one it happens ridiculously fast.
It's really the same thing, right? I mean, he's more dynamic and it's a much better skier.
Let's see if I can get that a little more in the frame so we can see it. That was working for me before. Well, so I think to me, the big thing, he's starting out this turn, and let's go ahead and do this frame by frame. So this is a high speed, very tight radius turn. He's got a big edge angle, but the big difference between him and the other skiers, he's got a lot of angulation. He's getting a ton of pressure to the outside ski. And it's gripping, and I don't know why this is cutting off on me. But somewhere in here, I think I see
Try
like the
reloading the
inside
page
ski.
again.
Let's see.
There you go.
And start there.
Gordon, can you go full screen on that for us as well?
Yeah,
please?
I can try and see if it works. Yeah, that's better.
Thanks.
So anyway, right about here, something happens because he's in a great position right here. And all of a sudden watch his outside hand starts to rotate faster than the inside hand. And his
I
center
wonder
mass
if he
starts
boots
moving
out.
forward.
I wonder if he catches his boot on the snow.
Possible, yeah.
And that throws him forward, and he gets on such a high edge angle that he almost loses it. Because he's at a really high edge angle.
Oh yeah, he's at a huge edge angle. So yeah, what happens to him when his outside hand rotates faster and he squares up over the skis? What's that gonna do to which ski is getting pressure?
Well, so when he brings his outside hand forward, I would think that's gonna move him inside a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does come way forward. Yeah.
yeah. So all of a sudden that inside ski is gripping and taking off from underneath him. And the center of mass continues to move down the hill.
And it seems like that inside ski takes off on the outside ski too. The outside ski ended up looked like it started getting behind him.
I couldn't account for the huge tip lead there, but
Yeah.
all right. Well, I thought those were kind of fun.
That guy's pretty athletic and pretty agile.
Yeah, it's an amazing save, wasn't it?
Mhm.
That's because that's Jonathan Ballou. This just happened like a couple of weeks ago when he was down at Rookies Academy.
That
There
was
was another-
Jonathan Ballou?
That's Jonathan Ballou. They were
wow.
doing video for Rookies Academy and he almost blew out. And then it was on Instagram. And then remember Mark, SSU Mark from Austria, who we did some stuff on like rotation a couple weeks ago. He posted another one where he was getting videoed too. And he did an almost identical same thing. Where the pressure on the outside key suddenly that spiked on him and he was thrown. And I got video of that one too. It's really, luckily was in slow motion. It's really cool.
Nice to know they're human.
They're human. Yep. Exactly. They're not always perfect.
All right, managing pressure, extension, and flexion from the Alpine Technical Manual. Managing forces with up-unweighting. A quick extension of the legs produces a momentary reduction pressure when the skier's center of mass reaches the top of movement. This is my own interpretation in here, a rapid, longer leg movement. So who wants to jump in and talk about this?
Can you say that differently? Because I find that very confusing. Because I saw
Which part?
up-weighting as raising your body and taking the pressure off your, I'm going to say, lower body feet. Right? You're just but the quick extension of the legs. Does that mean like you just like standing up more? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, so that would, part of the pressure management moves is the speed of the movement and how we're making the movement, flexion, extension, or a combination of both. So yeah, with up-unweighting, it's a quicker up movement. So you extend the legs quickly and the center of mass moves up. Once it stops, there's an unweighting move. So you can see with the picture here, he's pretty flexed. And then he does a quick extension movement. The legs are both longer. He's actually popping himself off the snow and then landing. So what comes to mind when you think about up-unweighting?
Well, there's a interesting video out there from Steamboat where a guy's teaching kids to do pole jumps, I think he called them. And it's all with the ankles. Think about when you hop, right? You're unweighted. If you're off the ground, you've unweighted your skis, right? Well, if we do just little jumps, it's a lot of that's our ankles. It's not bending deep and jumping like we're doing a foul shot or something. It's just a very quick ankle motion and you can jump off the ground. So that's one of the things that it's kind of an interesting point in terms of the quickness that gives you if you need to, like you're skiing along and you have to get over a rock that you didn't see.
Right.
quick extension of your ankles and you're over it.
Well, isn't up-unweighting part of the level 2 exam where you're going from one edge to the other edge? And if you don't up-unweight, you'll never get to the other edge.
So you're referring to hop turns,
Yes, sir.
which is what this is, and that's actually a level 3 task.
Oh, is it?
And the idea is that you will hop up in the air on one set of edges and then land on the other set of edges with as little a rotation as possible.
Right. And part of the intent of that, as I've had it explained to me, is that you're using ski performance, maybe more so than body performance, to get the unweighting. But wasn't up-unweighting, didn't that used to be a fundamental with the PSIA a long time ago?
Yeah, it was part of pressure. But that actually started with the Allberg method back in the 50s.
Yeah.
So up-unweighting is still a huge thing in the Austrian school, right? You've got to be able to move upwards in order to move the skis from side to side. But as the US has matured, we've discovered that there are actually multiple ways in which to transition, and the Allberg, the old Allberg method, which is still big now. If you watch a lot of Austrian skiers, even in their performance turns, they move up quite a bit. But you can also down unweight, you can do a performance, you can do the rebound turns, you can do all kinds of things. Each one being more athletic than the rest.
To me,
A little bit of
it's
history.
I keep it simple in my mind. Extending is up-unweighting and contracting is down-unweighting.
So yeah, interesting thought. And as I dug into this, I think, I think we'll get to some more nuance there. So to me, up-unweighting, this is what I see most of our guests doing just about 100% of the time.
Yep.
You know, if you don't have great timing and technique on your edging and your rotation, you're going to tend to up-unweight to make the skis easier to rotate side to side. You know, it has a lot of uses, but then one of the big drawbacks, I think, is that up-unweighting, if we're doing that in transition, it's going to take us a little while before we're able to get pressure back to the skis as we get into the initiation return. So, managing forces with down-unweighting. So again, right out of the technical manual, a quick flex of the legs produces a momentary reduction of pressure when the skier's center of mass drops. Pressure returns when the center of mass reaches the bottom of the movement. So to me, and looking at this picture, this looks like a rapid short leg, shorter leg movement. Both legs flexing to create the down-unweighting movement. So what do you guys think there?
I think there's a couple different ways to down-unweight. One is quickly retracting your legs, and the other one is relaxing them, which is more of an absorption.
Right. Yeah, there's a different term for that. We'll get to absorption in just a minute.
Right.
These
So
are
when
retraction turns.
Yeah. But both of those methods reduce pressure on your skis. Just the down-unweighting is quicker.
Right.
Than the absorption.
Yeah, so in the technical manual, it says this is a good technique in moguls for the upside of a mogul. So, you know, up-unweighting is a rapid extension, down-unweighting is a rapid flexion. So the next flavor of pressure management using flexion extension is a retraction movement. That's actively pulling up the legs, lightens the connection between the skis and the snow. And to me, this sounds like the skis are moving up to the center of mass. Down unweighting, it sounded like the center of mass was moving down to the skis. And then this is a more gradual movement. So who's done retraction turns and why?
Oh, I have.
Because they told me to. Nobody wants to do retraction
Yeah.
turns.
So Scott, why were you doing them? What kind of skiing?
Well, when you ski moguls, you got to be quick. And
Mhm.
retraction is basically you pull your legs up, drop your tips down the back sides. It's just part of the way you do it.
So how would this be different than a down unweighting in your mind?
The same thing.
Well, there are different things in the technical manual, right? So
the
the
technical manual talk about it down unweighting as more of an absorption than a retraction.
So the technical manual, let's back up here, talks about 4 pressure management movements: up unweighting, down unweighting, absorption, and retraction. So those are the flavors, and the last 3 are all movements where either the center of mass moves lower or the base of support moves up and the center of mass stays low. Up unweighting is the only one where the center of mass moves up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, down unweighting is going to be a quicker movement, and a retraction turn is going to be a more gradual movement. So to me, yeah, in the bumps, when you hit a bump, you have to make a quick movement to absorb it. That would be a down unweighting. When I think about a retraction turn, you know, I tend to think, and we'll get into this more in when we get into the article, maybe a high-speed short radius turn when you have a lot of pressure at the end of the turn. You want to make a more gradual movement of compressing and absorbing. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So then the next one, again from the technical manual, absorption. Relax muscles and give in to forces pushing on skis, creating a momentary reduction in force used to regulate pressure on varied terrain. So the picture here shows the guy making a gradual flexion movement to absorb kind of a big bump. You know, these are subtle distinctions between these last 3, between absorption, retraction, and down unweighting. But when you think about absorption, what do you guys think about? Are there other uses than just absorbing a big bump and resisting going down?
Well,
So-
you can do this on groomed terrain. It's just a different way to make a turn. And it's absorption, like if you're doing medium radius turns, you could do a little bit slower extension, or you could do a slower retraction and have the same unweighting effect, just with a different way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great example. You're doing a medium radius carved turn. Early in the turn, you're going to be extending your legs to get pressure started earlier. And as you pass the fall line, you'll start to absorb those forces again. It's so that you start to release the turn just after the apex of the turn and trigger the edge change. So, the picture in the Alpine technical manual looks like a gradual shorter leg movement. It doesn't seem a lot different than retraction. I think as I've thought about it, and we'll see more in the 4 turns article, I think this can also be done with a gradual long leg, short leg movement. So let's move on.
Hey, Gordon, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Which one would you use to kind of explain what you're doing to keep yourself from getting airborne, right? Would that be more of a, I'm looking at maybe absorption or retraction, but as you got a bump coming or a drop off or something like that, maybe those are 2 different things, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I don't know that I can answer that specifically, but as I think about it, keep yourself from getting airborne. If it's something where you have to make a really high speed movement, that would be categorized as down-unweighting. A retraction turn, actually pulling up legs, like a pre-jump, you see a downhiller going down the downhill course, they get to a compression bump. They're going to extend and then pull their legs up towards them to compress and avoid getting airborne at a high speed. And then absorption kind of looks like the same thing. So I don't know. Can anybody else jump in and help?
I have a little different thought on it, just from the mogul perspective.
Yeah.
If you're skiing moguls fairly slowly, you're going to use a lot more of an absorption turn. If you're skiing them really fast, you're going to use more of a retraction turn, because you got to get you got to get rid of that pressure much faster. So you have to pull your feet up rather than just absorbing it if you're skiing slower. That's one of the ways I think of it.
Yeah, those are good points. So going through here, down-unweighting, quick flex of the legs, the center of mass drops. As you look at retraction, pulling up the legs. And then this last one, absorption, is relaxing the muscles and giving in. So again, some kind of subtle differences among the 3 techniques.
I also kind of look at them in a little bit different light. I look at them in terms of physical exertion. I mean, I kind of made the comment about retraction turns. How many of you actually like doing retraction turns all the time?
They're
It's a
exhausting.
lot of work.
No, they exhaust the hell out of you, right? And if you do bumps, when you're doing a lot of a physical exertion, whether it's retraction or absorption or a combination of those 2, it's very physically exhausting. And the one that's not quite as exhausting is kind of the up move. That's a way more relaxed. But what are the drawbacks from being relaxed and doing in terms of doing retraction absorption turns, right? And this is where I'm kind of like, the technical manual isn't really, to me, like the Bible. I'm not real fanciful. I like the 4 types of turns much better, because they're more succinct and they draw a nice line between them. These are kind of like, these are what we kind of like, and we got to put them in here. But we haven't fleshed out the entire idea yet, which is kind of what PSI does, right? So, but I mean, in terms of this, is if we want quicker movement, we got to use the types of turn shape, or the types of turning motions that are going to allow us to have quicker movements. If we move up, what's going to happen? What's the long-term drawback in terms of a turn?
Well, when you move up, it's slower. It takes you longer to get your skis on edge and engaged
Yes.
than when you go the other way.
So yes,
which isn't so bad in longer radius turns.
Hey, in just skiing down the hill in the morning at 8 a.m., maybe that's your entire goal, right? Yeah. I just want to get down. I have no reason to do anything crazy. I just want to warm up a little bit. I want something nice. And I'm giving up the fact that I might have high edge engagement early in a turn. I might give up the fact that I'm really interested in going really fast. I'm giving up some things in order to get a not more relaxed movement. When I'm doing retraction turns, I am like, no, I'm going to be physically into this, and I'm going to make sure that I have high edge angles and high engagement. And I'm going to do it really, really early in a turn, but I'm giving up that nice relaxed thing. There's no way around it, right? So that's kind of, there's a trade-off there in terms of all of these ways that we start this thing, how we handle this managing the pressure. And remember, all of these ways to me, in a lot of ways, are just kind of level 2 aspects of it, and a little kind of beginner level 3. But yeah, I mean, if we want to get really on edge early, really turning early, we got to have contact with the snow right now. And that means moving over our skis. That means retracting and then extending quickly, but in a spot where we're very close to the snow so we can engage fast. But we give up the nice relaxed notion of, you know, hey, I'm just going to take a nice easy run. Cool. Back to you, Gordon.
Yeah, so my aha moments, I mentioned it before, but only up-unweighting requires the center of mass to move up. All the other pressure control movements require the center of mass to remain low or move down. And we'll talk about this a little more in Tale of Four Turns. And this is a Gumby quote: "We can't flex the skis and make them interact with the snow without pressure." So, you know, the thing in my mind is regulating pressure the secret sauce, or the dirt, or the glue to edging, rotation, and fore-aft fundamentals. Any thoughts there?
Yeah. The answer to that question, in my opinion, is yes.
Yeah. Okay, any other ahas as you guys went through the materials?
Let me throw out another thing, because I think some people may still be confused on the down-unweighting, absorption, retraction, because everything's moving down on those. So maybe one way to think about down-unweighting is you're tall and you sink to the snow quickly. That's down, you sink to the snow. Versus retraction, where you're tall, and I'm thinking about, I'm on a set of parallel bars and I'm holding myself up with my arms and I suck my legs up. And that's going to make me go low, but I'm doing it by sucking my legs up instead of dropping my upper body down. I think that's the difference between down-unweighting and retraction.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Could you also say that for retraction, the center of mass is momentarily remains where it is, and then eventually it drops down, as opposed to the down-unweighting, where the center of mass starts moving down.
I like that idea, because you're pulling your legs up, right? If you're pulling your legs up, so your center of mass for a moment isn't dropping down, right? But obviously gravity is going to pull it down really fast. I like what you're saying. I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of them is about softening, right? And the other one's about physically shortening the distance.
Right.
I like Chuck's statement, if it is Chuck. Pressure through extension and flexion movements is preparation for edging and rotation. I never thought about that.
Chuck, did you
Yeah.
say that, or did I make that up?
No, that was kind of the direction that we were talking about going, which was, you were talking about flexion and extension movements. And I was like, cool. Those are all ways that we get to edging and rotation. right? So what's the order of operations? Here, it's much better if you see me. The order of operations is pressure
Ski to
first,
ski,
edging
edge.
next. Well, it's not necessarily ski to ski. It's also, we got to be moving down the hill. So pressure first, which is easy because 95% of the time we have pressure on your skis anyway. We have edging next, and then rotation to taste. As Jenny likes to say, you know, just a little bit of rotation to help with the engagement part. And then we hammer the rotation maybe later in the turn if we really need to shorten it. But the idea is that those flexion and extension movements going from here to middle to here prepares us for that edging, that outside ski pressure, that rotational part to move into from one turn into the next. Which is kind of the idea behind these 4 turns. Are we going to go through the 4 turns in the article though? Because I love those. Those are more nuanced to me.
Yeah. So let's move on to Tale of 4 Turns. This article I thought was great. It really, to me, put a lot more nuance on my understanding of the 4 pressure management techniques. So some of the big takeaways I had from the 4 Turns article, the first one was their definition of the transition phase. So that overlaps the finish and initiation phases. And it's kind of the same thing as what PSIA calls finishation. And I've heard this before, but I think for a long time, I thought of transition a lot more narrowly. Was this kind of a revelation to anybody else?
Well, what I started thinking about as we talked about this in the past is transition starts in my mind when you start to lessen your edge angle. And it finishes, transition finishes once you've created a new edge angle going the other way.
Yeah, exactly. And Tale of 4 Turns even goes a little further. It says when the ski edges are engaged. So
There you
to me,
go,
that
right.
sounds like when the skis are actually starting to flex.
Right, not just tipped, but they're actually engaged for the new turn. I like that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it takes more than 2 fundamentals to make the ski do what you want it to do. You got to have pressure, you got to have some kind of edging, and you got to have some kind of rotation.
For just defining skis engaged, would you also say you're changing the direction? The skis are now taking you in a new direction?
Exactly. That means engaged. That means the skis are physically moving you in a new direction. Instead of it's not necessarily you pointing the skis in a new direction, because that doesn't mean it's changing the direction of the center of mass. It is when the skis are forcing the center of mass to the inside of the next turn.
yeah, so I had a conversation about turn phases with Jim Shaw, because I'm not a big fan of the PSIA idea of, hey, it's a third. And
he's not a fan of it at all.
No.
And he will talk your ear off about it.
Yeah. So the British Association of Ski Instructors, their turn phases are build, work, and release. So the build phase would be what we call initiation. And that's where you're getting the skis in a position to actually do something. And then their shaping phase is the work phase. That's where the skis are actually interacting with the snow, creating force. And, you know, to me, that kind of thought process supports this idea of initiation being that phase from the very start of the finish phase, where we're starting to take the skis, reduce the edge angle, reduce the pressure, all the way through to the shaping phase where we're creating pressure.
And I would go a little bit further than what you said, Scott. I don't think it
Yeah.
starts, I don't think it starts when the skis start to, when you start to reduce pressure, flex or untip the skis. I like the idea of transition starting when you make the decision to move the other direction. So it's just after that decision that all these things start to happen.
Mhm.
So
Actually,
it's a
that's a
little
really good
farther
point.
into the finish.
Yeah, it could be a little farther in the finish, but as soon as you decide to go the other direction, that's where, oops, now I got to start thinking about reducing the pressure on the old outside ski. I'm doing that through flexion and extension, and that's going to allow me to start untipping the skis. And I'm starting to consciously move my center of mass across my skis.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the way I think about it.
the way I read this is the transition. The only part of the turn that the transition excludes is the shaping phase. So you think about it, the finish of the turn starts pretty much as soon as we start to redirect pressure and flatten the edges a little bit. So that's where it seems this says the transition starts.
We have this person who was on the national team by the name of Carol Levine. And I was out with her one day and she said, I want you to focus on just thinking about where you're going to turn. And she says, when you start thinking about where you're going to turn, you're getting everything ready. And I think, Chuck, that's what you were saying, that, you know, when you think you're going to turn, bam, it all starts to come together. And I think you're right on that.
Yeah, back in the 90s, we had beginning, middle, and end.
Mhm.
But the problem is the beginning was kind of like before the old turn had finished.
Yeah.
Right.
It's, oh, I need to change directions here. And they do the same thing in racing still, where it's not in this, you know, they break it up into four. So it's like the preparation, then the shaping, or preparation, then initiation, shaping, and there the preparation is the part of the transition phase, which moves you into the next turn. So that's what Jim Shaw's bitches about, is the fact that when you start talking about initiation, it's already too late, right? It's like the initiation for him is like, well, you've already flattened the skis. The decision was made moments ago.
Yep.
You already are moving into the next turn. Why is this now initiation? And I 100% agree with him, because it's, in fact, you know, transition is really, and as level 3 candidates, all of you are going to be thinking about transition about 95% of the time. How do I get from one turn into the next? How can I smoothly move the end of this turn, and that will allow me to be smoothly moving into the next turn?
Yeah, and that's what Carol Levine was saying.
Right.
If you're looking at, I'll just say 10 yards ahead, now you begin to think about, okay, what do I have to do to make it successful in a smooth way? Yeah, I would agree with you, or Jim.
Yeah.
So now I'm going down the rabbit hole and thinking about lane changes. So I'm making 3 short turns. About in the middle of that third short term, I'm thinking about my next long turn.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's apex.
So it changes
apex,
your
right?
transition. Yeah.
Right.
It's apex.
Right.
Apex.
I got to make changes in the way I finish the first turn to get to the second turn, the change in the turn shape.
So that's the major change that I had this last year, was thinking, instead of a turn, oh, you know what? If I don't have the video on, it doesn't really help me that much. Instead of this is the turn. It's here, apex to apex, and all the things are happening in here. And so you go from shaping to shaping, the bottom of one shaping to the top of the next one, and then you're not discounting all this crazy stuff that happens in the most important section, which is that transition phase.
Yeah.
You're right. And as soon as you start thinking about that, lane changes get a whole lot easier, because now it's like, okay, this turn is over at the apex, and now I need to lengthen it out and stretch it a little bit and make it uniform, not only side to side, but from top to bottom. And that cueing comes a whole lot easier.
Yeah, you might use a different transition entirely. You might go from using absorption or retraction in the short turns to up-unweighting to get you projecting across the hill.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So getting on into tail of four turns and versus regulating pressure. So what PSI calls up-unweight, they call an extension turn. The skier extends in transition, and this is critical, extends in transition to delay the turn entry. So they're easing pressure. And also they use it to regain balance from the center of mass getting thrown aft. So, you know, to me, again, one of those down the rabbit hole moments, this article says basically up-unweighting is primarily a recovery movement in very high performance skiing. Anybody, how does everybody else react to that idea? No reactions?
I mean, I guess I could see that. I mean, if you're, you know, if you don't need to recover, you can probably keep that center of mass low and just work, you know, work getting those skis out to the outside, you know, out to the apex of the turn, and kind of do where you're turning the skis under your feet instead of moving your body over the lot back and forth over the skis.
Yeah, I mean, I ski raced in the early 80s, and up and down has been up-unweighting has been kind of my go-to movement for a long time. So I'm reading this and it's relegating that movement in high performance skiing, kind of a recovery move or a specialty move. So, and I'm sitting here going, wow. So I go to maybe try a level 3 ski, I got to be working on absorption, I got to be working on retraction, and down-unweighting a lot more, and using that 3 times as much, and maybe understanding strategically when I should be using up-unweighting.
Yeah, Gordon, towards the end of last year, I came to the conclusion that I want to be flexing through the transition, not extending.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's quicker, it keeps your edges on the snow, gets them engaged sooner, and you know, the extension then becomes a lateral extension instead of an up extension.
Right.
As you go into the new turn.
So the next turn type.
May I ask a question would be, what is there an ideal that is there an ideal?
Depends on what kind of turn you're making.
Yeah.
Depends on what you want to do. A lot of that's what's your motivation.
Of course,
Scotty, you bought the
obviously, but
PSI.
yeah, PSI. I'm kind of like in the
100%.
PSI. Yeah, I'm kind of trying to get to the PSIA ideal.
Yeah, it depends. That would be 100% their answer.
So,
Even in,
Diane, to answer your question a little bit, the up-unweight for the World Cuppers is that's where they're trying to get across the hill, or they're trying to recover from getting thrown too far back. So that is the ideal turn with that intent in those situations. But, you know, PSI, especially at level 3, what we're looking at is adaptability, precision, and what's the third one, Chuck? I always forget this for a second. Oh, accuracy, versatility, and adaptability.
I love all of those words. I love all of those words. I'm just trying to translate them into like, okay, then what? Like,
so in terms
here's one way to look at it, Diane, is if you're talking about the ideal being a performance turn, it's not up-unweighting. It's absorption, retraction, just depending on how high a performance you want. But in a performance turn, you shouldn't be up-unweighting. in most cases.
Diane, are you kind of,
So, like, I guess maybe I'm just curious on reflections around how to think about this fundamental on groom terrain, which I think maybe is more straightforward, versus ungroomed terrain, which is like, at least to me, like not as straightforward on what would the PSIA ideal be, like, for me.
Diane, are you kind of asking, so like taking all the maneuvers out of the IDP, right? Like basic parallel turns, short radius turns, medium radius performance, short radius performance, all those kinds of things. And then how do you apply this? How do you apply these, what's ideal for each of those? Is that kind of what you're asking?
What are you
I
thinking
was
about,
mostly
Ivy?
thinking about like pressure, like what's the ideal for pressure in ungroomed terrain, and how to understand like
Let me
these
try to
these-
answer this question in kind of a roundabout way. There was a couple years ago, I attended a webinar where we talked about, and it was 100% Michaela Shiffrin, right? And we were talking about these four things, these four items, the up-unweight, the absorption, retraction, and we spent the entire hour and 20 minutes doing nothing but identifying which turns she did, which of these kinds of styles of turns she did when. And the conclusion is that she did all of those all the time. So it really comes to the, and especially when you're talking about variable terrain and this whole idea of sometimes the ski pushes against us and sometimes we push back, right? There are going to be times where the snow kind of overwhelms us a little bit, and Gordon's done a marvelous job of showing that, where things happen and happen at a very fast rate. We have to make adjustments to that, and we have two choices. We can either resist it or we can allow it to happen and recover. So we want to be versatile and adaptable and have the ability to let things happen so that they don't overwhelm us. So, and one of the things we kind of made a decision early on was try to not necessarily avoid about ski snow interaction, but the ski snow interaction part of this whole thing is vitally important in understanding the fundamental. And that whole idea of, if the ski's not on the ground, nothing's happening. If the ski isn't pressured, nothing's happening. If ski is not edged, nothing's happening. We have to have a combination of all these things happen. And as soon as those skis bite into snow, that's where pressure management, this part of pressure management, becomes vitally important. So, and that's like I was telling Joel Gordon a couple of days ago, whoever came up with this fundamental was genius. Because nobody understands it. And it's been what, 5 years since it came out, right? And people are still fighting over what it really means. And then, in 10 years from now, we'll probably be like, oh yeah, okay, now we could button down those things because all the ideas have been harvested. But this is a truly hard fundamental, because they got all these other fundamentals that really speak about how we control the skis and to do things. But we ignore the fact that there is a ski-snow interaction that's happening. The skis are reacting to the snow and the snow is reacting to the skis. If we don't talk about that in some way, this fundamental, all the other fundamentals don't really matter. Cool. Does that help you answer your question in a
very
kind of a
cool,
roundabout?
very
Yeah.
cool, very cool. And the thing that I take away is, unlike some other fundamentals where we think about it's very prescriptive, this is
Yes.
all of these ways to regulate pressure are right. And it's all in bounds. And that actually is really cool to think about. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks.
I'm glad that helps.
Nice
Versus,
breakthrough.
like, number 1, number 2, number 3, right? Like we have to do all of these things. Okay.
Mhm. So back to tale of 4 turns, and I want to blaze through this and get to the MA pretty quickly. So what PSIA calls absorption, the World Cuppers call a performance turn. Weight is actively transferred to the outside ski to transfer momentum into the next turn, and the skier remains in a low athletic position. So, that puts a lot more, I guess, a lot more options into an absorption turn than just that picture we saw of somebody kind of statically going over a big bump and soaking it up. So this to me starts to sound like a long leg, shorter leg movement. The center of mass is staying low, and we're using that kind of movement in a long radius turn where we want to keep our speed up, keep the skis connected to the snow, and manage the pressure through the turn. Create it early, release it late, and then redirect the momentum. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
The next one, retraction. In the PSIA, that was a gradual movement where the base of support moves up to the center of mass. And in 4 turns, they say that the World Cuppers use this kind of transition when the pressure is at the heavy at the end of the turn, and that the center of mass remains low through transition. And my apologies here. I'm just realizing that this would have been a lot better discussion if I'd cut and pasted the photographs from the article. But who in looking at that, does that trigger an aha about what a retraction turn really is?
So I wanted to comment that I found the diagrams and the photographs in the article with the arrows pointing to the various positions and movements in the turn shape very, very helpful, because I'm more of a visual learner. So looking at particularly Michaela Shiffrin's body as she was extending in her performance turn, for me was very helpful. So I just wanted to make a comment, particularly to Diane, that the photos for me were probably more helpful than reading the descriptions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And then the final one, down-unweighting, in the article, they call that a rebound turn. And that's a reaction to overpressure at the finish, and they use for rapid change at higher speeds. One difference from the PSA, their picture showed the skis changing edges in the air. All right, so I want to move on to the MAs. Any final points that people want to make here?
Please, if you're confused, please speak up.
Yeah, as Ilona said, I think the pictures, and again, my apologies, I don't know why it didn't occur to me to put the pictures in. The pictures are very helpful for highlighting these.
I will chime in. I think where it's intuitive to me, where I have felt these forces before and I've skied them before. And so then it makes sense. But when I think about, it's not intuitive to me to translate this into teaching. And I'd be curious if folks have reflections on that, because it's one thing to have, like, become a better skier over time and felt these things and made changes, and another to like think about teaching. So thanks.
Anybody got anything on that? Because I got a couple ideas.
I have an opinion on it.
Go ahead, go ahead.
When we're normally teaching at lower level, it's all going to be the extension, because that's the easiest thing for people to learn. It's the most comfortable. It's the most logical for a new skier. If you start talking about down-unweighting and retraction, I mean, you start talking about absorption a little when you get into
I'm really
moguls.
thinking about like, I'm thinking about like people who are like ready to tackle the bumps, like big, like or like they can succeed in the basic bumps, like flex extend situation, like moving them past their first, you know, people who can ski.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's when you start to bring it in.
Yeah, so
When
skiing
people want to
when-
go into bumps, that's when I start to bring it in.
when they get it, are you saying they're already been in bumps?
Yeah, like they can navigate, you know, basic bumps.
But they
Flex
know they're
extend.
clearly in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, bumps are different. And we kind of skipped around this a little bit. Probably ought to bring it back in, but dirt plays a huge amount when we start talking about bumps. And when we do stuff, right? It may be different than regular turns out on the snow. Obviously we don't want to be, kind of like when I got my 3-year-olds who try to do the snowplow too fast, right? And then all of a sudden they're on their butt because the skis literally skied out from underneath them. We don't want to be too far into the turn, but we also want to be able to control our speed in a way. And it all comes down to when we do the things that we do. And again, this comes down to these kind of same themes. When do we want to go up? When do we want to go down? When do we want to resist? So, and why? And it really, the key in bumps is we really got to have early engagement, because early engagement gives people control. And in order for us to have early engagement, we have to have our tips down, and we have to be in a position that we can pressure those tips and get the tips to dig. That's everything in the bumps for most, I would say, intermediate skiers, fivers moving into 6, is that feeling of control that they get from having their tips engage early instead of waiting. So that comes down to absorbing the bump and then releasing the body first, and then the skis over the bump, and then allowing the tips to dig, but having your body in a position where it's over the ski this way, that you can dig the snow down into the snow. Because what happens is most people go to a bump and they go here, and then the skis go, and their body's still like this, and then they wonder why they're not slowing down, right? But the timing is critical. So instead, we get to here, and then we let the body go first, and then the skis will go next. That's that timing thing. And it's about getting that early engagement so that we can get the skis to, like I said, get that control, get that contact, get that engagement. Cool. Does that help? Groovy.
Okay.
I said a lot of words. I think I could have said it all in about 20 words or less.
All right. So
The shotgun method tonight.
I'm skipping through a couple of slides here. I want us to get to the MAs. Anybody who wants, I can send a PDF of the deck. If you want to look at the IDP.
Actually, you can download the deck. I have posted on the posted in the folder. So
let's go to the MAs here. And Tell you what, let's just watch this skier. This, I think, is some pretty good skiing, and then maybe go to MA on the next skier. All right, anybody want to jump in there?
Honestly, I couldn't see the skis.
Okay, let's try that again. 5, 2. And not sure what this is doing to me right here. This is odd.
Try reloading again.
Yeah, okay.
We've got browser issues right now.
So here's some pretty ideal skiing.
Mhm.
And then let me loop this. All right. Anybody want to take a shot at describing this?
I'll take a shot.
Okay.
So, got a skier making mostly parallel short radius turns on what looks like to be an intermediate run. The skis move fairly quickly at initiation in a kind of a pivot rotary move, and they don't really get engaged until late in the shaping phase. That's all I got for right now. And there's a little bit of a sequential move, a little bit of a rotary push off, where you see the new outside ski go quicker than rotate quicker than the inside ski. But other than that, it's pretty good skiing.
In terms of the pressure management movements, which of those would you say that she's using?
She's using an up-unweight.
Okay.
And I see that because you can kind of see her head bob up and down. When she initiates, she extends her legs. She sinks down towards the finish. So that's kind of the clue that I see for that.
And I would add to that, I think her use of her ankles is spectacular. She can bend her ankles. She can get off her ankles if it's a she.
Yeah, she uses them a lot to help her with her unweighting too, right?
Yes,
you can see her
exactly.
ankles flex and extend. That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if I'm taking a tangent here, but I think the up-weighting is affecting that the ski's not engaging until late in the shaping phase,
Right.
and kind of causing a bit of a side slide, which I can't remember the proper term for that right now. But before the skis actually hook up and start changing direction.
Yeah, kind of a pivot,
Yeah.
like a side or a slip. I'm sorry, like a slip, a pivot slip. Cool. So when do the skis? when do the skis engage?
At the end of the shaping phase, beginning of the finish.
So if you're gonna work with her, what would be more ideal? What would you work on?
I'd work
Early
on
initiation.
getting her to engage her skis earlier in the turn, tip before twisting, tip the skis before rotating, and work on getting them engaged earlier so that she makes a smoother, rounder turn, which is what we always like to talk about.
Retraction, down-unweighting, performance. She's clearly up-unweighting, right?
Yeah.
Right, which is costing her time. And that's costing her ability to engage the ski early.
Yeah, I mean, you could really talk about her transition, and instead of timing her extension during the transition, have her use an absorption movement, keeping her center of mass low and timing the extension to be as she starts the turn, a lateral extension rather than a vertical one. All right, let's.
I have a question.
Hold on.
I didn't see a vertical extension here.
There is. It's up. Watch her head. It goes up and then down. Up and then down. As the skis go underneath her, she's in her most extended.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Well, she's always at initiation, she's always straightening her knees and opening her ankles. Maybe that'll help.
So what of those 4 turns, which one would be the best one we want to coach her on? I think this is a good place to kind of mine some useful information. Would it be a performance turn? Would it be a retraction turn? Would it be a down-unweighting turn? And what would that give her? Come on, Scotty, you mentioned the rotary push-off.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think about the terms you just used and pick one from them.
Yeah, pick one.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think is the answer like more short leg, long leg here?
Yeah. Yes.
So in terms of like coaching this, it's softening the inside leg more and directing more pressure to the outside ski.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
I don't-
achieving that, right? But when does she achieve it? So there's angulation right there. There's hip angulation, there's hip angulation. That's pretty good knee angulation. That's pretty good knee angulation. But how is she, right now she's using a rotary push-off to move from side to side. That is how she's getting from one side to the other. And her engagement is it offensive? Is it defensive? Is it a combination of those two? Right? Is this these are all questions that I'm asking in my mind. Is there an understanding issue here? Is the speed relevant to the task? Right? These are all questions that I'm asking in my mind. So when I'm looking at her in terms of those 4 ski styles that we've been talking about, right? Up-unweighting, down-unweighting, performance, and retraction, which one's going to give her the most bang for the buck right now? She's already doing up-unweighting, and we already know that's costing her the ability to engage the ski early because she has to wait for the skis to come back and get enough edge angle and it'll get them away from her enough that she can allow the skis to engage.
What about absorption?
Well,
So-
yeah, she uses absorption or well, that would be the performance turn. And in my mind, yeah, because that's going to allow the skis to get out and let the skis do the performance, let the ski performance allow the skis to come back instead of pushing off to get from one side or the other. You know, it's a lot easier when I use a video.
Maybe
So
it's
instead
because
of this,
not-
pushing this way to get to over here, she's going like this to get to the other side. But that's gonna, and you were right, Diane. We're going to have to adopt some longer leg, shorter leg in order for that to happen. She's gonna have to be more dynamic in her flex and extension movements, because right now all she's doing is going up and down with her upper body. She's not trying to keep her upper body steady and allow the skis to come up and down. Does this make sense?
Mm,
So
a
if the
little
body
bit.
was,
only a little bit to me.
Yeah.
But so like for me, it's intuitive to be like she needs long leg, short leg action happening, but
yeah,
I don't know how to translate that to pressure.
So what if we asked her to try and start her turns by shortening her new inside leg?
Oh, 100%. I would totally do that, but I don't know how that is exactly what I would do, but I don't understand how that translates to
well,
the
again,
fundamental
forget
of
about pressure. This is a part that I'm like, this is where the fundamental to me is backwards. It's not necessarily about pressure, because pressure is force that we feel. It's about ski snow interaction.
Okay, 100%. So this is where pressure really throws me off, because like if it's on groomed terrain like this, like I don't get pressure. I don't really get pressure why it's something special in like this type of terrain versus like directing, like why wouldn't we just focus on directing pressure to the outside ski, like as the thing, as the primary
Cool.
focus for this skier?
Yeah. I think that is a valid task, right? How could we get her to be more on the outside ski sooner?
Yeah.
Because right now when she's up, she can't get adequate pressure to the outside ski because she loses ski snow interaction.
And so so like for me, I would just go direct to that. If
And
it were,
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
that is fine. In a lot of
Jump
cases, in my mind, managing pressure, regulating pressure is more about identifying than it is, oh my God, you have to learn to engage your ski higher in a turn through, you know, that is just, how many of you have tasks for that, right? No, we try to attack those tasks through the other four fundamentals, not necessarily through the fifth fundamental. The fifth fundamental is, how are the skis reacting to the snow right now? And what is causing her to keep the skis from doing what they want to do when they want to do them? And in this case,
Second that, I mean, she's getting pressure to the outside ski. The issue is when it happens and the pressure regulating movement that she is using. So she's an advanced skier. That's when you need tools just beyond the other four fundamentals of pressure to the outside ski.
and this is, you know, this is level 3, right? So we're talking about 2 or more fundamentals at the same time. I'd want to see her do glass ceiling turns where her head cannot come up. I want her to allow her legs to come up instead. And when they transition from one side, I want you to relax and transition instead of pushing off. Relax and transition, let the skis move out, then apply pressure to the outside ski to bend the ski
Yeah, exactly.
and move it around.
Exactly.
That's what I want to see her do, that the first guy was doing really well. instead of this up-down, which is robbing her of the ability to engage the snow until well after the fall line. So, then this is cert 3 short turns. This would be a fail, right?
Yeah.
Well, Lord knows I know.
So I think we're totally agreeing, and
Yeah.
I completely understand what you're saying. And in terms of this like glass ceiling turn type of thing, like what helped me understand how to connect that to the pressure fundamental? That's my gap right now.
I would start looking at even though it's in the pressure realm, right? I would start looking at the 5th fundamental kind of on its own. And one of the things, what great way that I like to describe it is I need a way to identify all the interactions of all first 4 fundamentals to each other. And that is the description of how the skis interact with the snow. And then another way we saw it the other day was with Chris Caruso, who was like A plus B plus C plus D equals E, or 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 5. That's a better way of looking at pressure, regulating pressure, because it's pressure and it's in the pressure realm because the ski, good Lord, I got to turn my video, just leave it on. I'm trying to be like Jenny. Because this part is happening, right? But that's the only thing that it really means, right? That's the only thing that's really putting it. It's all the other fundamentals that are happening around it that we use, all the other controls. Like think of it like you have a dial, you have a readout, that's the 5th fundamental, and you have 4 dials, and I need to adjust each one of those dials in the turn in order to make this thing happen, stay within a range, right? Kind of like an audio board, I got to stay between 6 and 12, right? Because louder than 6 is somewhere between 6 and 0, and 12 or less is too soft. I got to dial all those a little bit just so I can hit that 6 spot. That's how I look at this pressure management fundamental in terms of real world experience, what I'm doing. But from when we're looking at skiers, I want to know when the ski is engaging with the snow. That tells me a lot about what's happening. Does that make
All
sense?
Yep.
We're
You
at
guys are welcome
30.
to argue with me. I love it. We got another one, Gordon. Go ahead, go to the other one.
No, it's 7:30 and I kind of promised that I'd move on. The other one's embedded in the deck, Chuck, or you've got the link here.
Oh yeah, short radius performance turns. And of course, it just didn't do anything. Let me try again.
Is it in the link?
Yeah, both of them, they didn't do anything.
Let's see here.
I know they did something before. Oh, maybe I already had them open.
So I just put that out in the chat.
Oh, okay. Well, that was the one from before. Oh, you had the one that was bumps, right? There was one that was 401 bumps, precision ski bumps. Is that what it was?
I don't know if that, no, that didn't make the final deck. Yeah, the CSIA level
Or
4
maybe that's
bumps.
just a continuation of the other ones.
That's, let me find it for you.
Well, we could end at 7:30. That's fine. It doesn't bother me. Are there any questions? Please. This is a very complicated issue.
Yeah, I guess I've got a question when we're talking about looking at that skier there. As
Yeah.
far as cause and effect and relating the fundamentals, would you say that the fore aft ski to ski edging and rotation are affecting the magnitude of pressure and therefore
On the-
ski snow
the
interaction,
first
or do you think
skier
it's
there?
the other way?
On the first skier there,
Yeah, the red helmet. That was. I think this is it.
yeah, this one right here.
Yep.
So what was the question one more time?
Yeah, just kind of we're talking about relating the fundamentals to each other.
Uh-huh.
Would you say that one, the fifth fundamental is being affected more by the others, or that the fifth fundamental is affecting the others?
Well,
Or
the fifth fundamental is a culmination of the others. Because the only things that we can control are our fore aft pressure, our ski to ski pressure, our rotational pressure, and our edging pressure, or our edging, right? And all of those relate to the fifth fundamental. And if, like I said, the first sentence in the technical manual, and when we talk about pressure management, is the most direct means of controlling pressure, managing our pressure, regulating our pressure, is through edging and rotation, even though it's in the pressure realm. And think of it this way: when we turn the skis sideways, what do we feel? We feel a lot of pressure, don't we? That's what we're talking about. We're putting the ski on edge, we're turning it sideways to our direction of travel. We're going to feel a lot of pressure. And then how do we release that pressure? Well, the easiest way to do that is to rotate the skis back and take them off of edge. We can mitigate the pressure through this thing, right? So this ski grabs a little bit more, kind of like that first skier, and then this one, he had to throw his weight to the other one, and that one blew up, and he lost all control. But yeah, this is how we kind of help regulate the pressure, but we also regulate the pressure this way and turning the skis more in the direction of our travel. Does that make sense? So,
Hey, I need to drop off. It's been a lot of fun tonight.
no
Thanks,
problem.
Gordon.
Thank you.
So yeah, we that's the way they've kind of organized these things in a way that they have, is to say we regulate our pressure or manage the pressure through these other four controls, right? That's those dials again, or slides or whatever. What I need a little bit more edging and a little bit less rotation over here because I need to manage the pressure in this particular turn. So look at, I don't want to say use the fifth fundamental as an identifier, but it's very difficult for us to say, okay, we're designing a task that's going to specifically target regulating pressure. Because when we do that, is like your examiner is going to look at you and say, okay, which fundamentals are we using to regulate that pressure? Because we can only control those first four. We can't really control the fifth. We control the fifth through the first four.
So I'm listening to you, and I have an interesting question, because we talked a lot about up-unweighting with her.
Yeah.
So up-unweighting, her fore aft balance was fine, right? Pretty good.
Yeah.
So the up-unweighting didn't affect her fore aft. Up-unweighting didn't seem to really be affecting ski to ski. So how does up-unweighting is going up and down, not much going on with rotary, not much going on with edging. So I'm trying to put that up-unweighting in one of the first four fundamentals.
So the up-unweighting affects her timing. and
which
the
is really
duration.
more in the fifth fundamental, right? It's
Right, it
pressure
is in the-
management.
It's in the fifth fundamental, yeah.
Yeah,
So a lot of the dirt that we have affects our fifth fundamental.
right.
So in her case, there's almost no pressure at the top of the turn because, well, there's a pressure spike as she extends her legs. And then there's like very little pressure. And then finally, not only does she have to fall back down to where she was, but further because she's now further down the hill. And what happens is that because the skis are not light, they turn really quickly, right? Because there's no pressure on them or edging. How do you stop a ski from rotating? You put it on edge and it will stop rotating and you pressure it.
So the up-unweighting that she's doing makes it really easier for her to rotate. And she tends to rotate in a pivot fairly quickly because there's no pressure on the ski. Lets her rotate them quickly. Then as she gets farther into the turn and the edges engage, they don't rotate as much. They're starting to edge and steer.
Yeah, technically what she's doing is rotating to an edge.
Yeah,
Gets up in the air, rotates. She still hasn't engaged until the pressure hits and then bam, skis go.
right.
But it happens, like you said, it happens at the last third, top of the last third. And all of a sudden,
Right.
boop, there she goes. She's off the next way. But
Yeah.
she's trapped because of the timing and because of the decision she made at the top of the turn and all that pressure happened at the bottom of the turn. She's now trapped. Biomechanically, she's trapped. Because now she's got to figure out, I've wasted all this time at the top. I'm blanded. I've got this quick thing. Now I gotta get to the other side. So what do I do?
And I've got all this pressure I'm dealing with.
I got all this pressure I got to deal with. So what do I got to do? It's very easy because this is intuitive. I just step to the next turn. It's very easy. I'm here, step, off I go. That's how I'm going to get to the other side. And that's
Right.
what she does.
And that's the
And
rotary push-off.
That's that
Yeah.
rotary push-off. So the rotary push-off in her case is kind of a reaction to the decision she made at how she was going to accomplish the top of the turn. Which is, like I said, none of these are wrong. They're just tactics, right? None of these are wrong. I mean, when I'm free skiing, man, up-unweighting is awesome because it's easy.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do retraction turns all the time. They suck.
Mhm.
They look really cool for about a minute, and then you're like, I'm done. Remember that day that we did retraction turns with Larry? I think that was
Yeah.
about as cooked as I had ever been.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I lasted that long. I mean, I don't think we even got to 3 o'clock. I was done. It's a very, very physical move. Yeah, but it's a very accurate move. So cool. Any
That's
other
why bump
questions?
skiers are so strong.
Strong smelling. Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Did you guys get
Your ice
anything
cream's
out of this?
melting,
Was this
Gumby.
useful? Yeah?
Yeah.
Did you feel like this was mind blowing or was this like, yeah, cool.
I
I'm
thought
getting a thumbs
so.
up.
Yes, I was very overwhelmed.
Yeah, trust me. I got the slide deck from Gordon like on Tuesday, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him until Wednesday or Thursday. And man, I just brought it. All I did was say like 4 sentences. He was like, whoa, wait a minute. I need to rethink this whole thing. Because it just, it's a hard subject to talk about.
I think
And-
also the fact that I'm not on snow, none of us are on snow right now, that
Exactly.
for me, I have to go back over these and I have to do these movements and simulate it on ground. And that will give me more of a feel for what that meaning is.
Yeah. So it's kind of like back to you, Scotty. I've been doing a lot of rollerblading this year. I
Yeah.
rollerbladed today, and the problem that I've been standing on the outside foot a lot and rotating around. But I also noticed that I get a lot of pressure at the end of the turn, and it almost forces me to step off of that skate before I move into the next turn. And I'm like, uh-oh, is this gonna affect how I ski? Is this affecting my timing? So I'm getting a lot of
It's
quick
easy to
twists.
get that rotary push off in when
It
you're
is.
on a big edge at the end of the turn. You just kind of step to the new turn.
Well, and it's like Ron Kipp said, actually rotary push-off exists in every single turn.
Yeah.
Just we don't use it as much in some turns as we do in others. So we allow the ski to push back against us. That's the same as a rotary push-off because the ski is actually physically turning.
So
But-
rotary push off, is this where at the finish of the turn, you're stepping on the inside? Is
Stepping
that-
on you step quickly on the outside ski.
Your
or you
old
pressure
outside
it
ski.
more.
Oh, okay, but so you've made enough of the turn where it is actually on the
Yeah,
outside.
You've gotten to about right here, right? You're like 2/3 of the way through, and I need to get from here to here, but I'm stuck. And instead of releasing this way and starting to turn, I go beep like this, and that's going to throw me. That's going to start the rotation to the other direction. And it's particularly effective when we're doing that up movement. You know what I mean? It's particularly effective when you're doing the up movement because it helps you get unstuck.
And is it because your old outside ski, is it like you've flattened the old outside ski and you're
Well, you
Like,
haven't flattened the old outside ski. Technically,
That's
what
the one
happens
you're
is
pushing
usually-
off.
Well, that's okay. So
Yeah.
the rotary push off, the reason you know it's rotary push off is because they didn't flatten it.
No, she does not. She
Okay,
goes
okay,
to
got it.
here,
Okay, so-
you see it go to here, and then all of a sudden there's bink, bink. It's very quick, but she moves. She pushes here, flattens this one, and moves across this way. She's using this motion to get from here to over here. Instead of allowing the
Versus-
skis to go here, then
Totally,
flattening.
okay.
Yeah. So in a way, I'm kind of like, yeah, Scott, I think she's moving kind of down the hill, but in a way, she's also moving back up the hill. Because she's not moving. Technically, she should get to here and then move this way. That'll allow her to flatten the skis. So it's the getting a release. She's not releasing. She's releasing after a bang. Cool. Yeah,
Thanks.
look for that in your skiing. We all do it. I'm lazy too. I'm a master at the rotary put off. When you've raced as long as I have, as old as I have, that was the only way to get from one side to the other. I mean, watch Deb Armstrong when she won her gold medal at the Olympics, where it was this constant movement of pushing from one side to the other side, pushing back and forth like this, you know. You had to push off because the skis didn't bend that much, right? So you had to push to get up to the next turn, and you bring the ski over and then you push from there. It's like a skate turn. And you had to get from one side to the other. That's all rotary push off. So it's like I said, it's Ron Kipp says it's in every turn. We just have to watch how much we do it. Cool. All right, that's enough. I'm done talking. Thank you for
All right.
everybody for coming. And next week I want to do something about teaching. Everybody excited about teaching part? Because apparently after reading some international bullet boards, PSI is particularly bad at teaching. We spend so much time identifying the problem and relating to our guests, right? We forget about this teaching thing. We got to figure out how to get them to do stuff. So I'm going to start investigating that a little bit more. I kind of see their point.
No, I'm
all been
with you
Ballou.
there. Yeah, I'm with you there. Simple progressions that aren't overwhelming. We need
Yeah,
to get
exactly.
better at that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to assume that we've already identified our guests' needs, and their wants and their motivations and all the other stuff that we're supposed to do literally in 10 minutes. That seems to be what we're all completely preoccupied with all the time.
For all 8 of your guests.
For all 8 of your guests, exactly. And let's just start talking about how we teach, right? How we move, get them to do what we want them to do. Cool. I think that would be particularly good. And then here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to start inviting some outside folks to do some MAs with us. People who are a whole lot smarter than I am, because I'm not real smart.
Sounds
That's
good.
the plan. All right, cool. We'll talk later. Thank you.
All right.